I used to think my boyfriend was the one person I could count on when life got hard. When my mom passed away I believed he would be there for me, but instead I found myself completely alone. The biggest shock came not from strangers but from him and the people closest to him. After I posted about my pain, one of his friends reached out and told me things I never imagined. Behind my back he had been calling me a psycho, lying about my relationship with my mom and telling his friends I was using her death to control him. He had been twisting every fight, every detail, every part of our life to make me look crazy and fake. To his friends I was a different person entirely, someone I didn't even recognize. That was the moment I realized I wasn't just grieving my mom, I was also grieving the person I thought my boyfriend was. The day after I posted, my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. I let it ring out. A few minutes later it rang again. I hesitated, then picked up. A male voice introduced himself. He said he was one of my boyfriend's friends. I froze for a second because I had never spoken to any of them alone before. He asked if I had been the one who posted online. I felt my stomach tighten. I didn't know if he wanted to attack me or help me. After a pause I said yes, it was me. He went quiet for a few seconds and then sighed. He said he had some things he felt I needed to know. He told me that at their last boys' night my boyfriend had been drinking and had started talking about me. He said I was acting crazy, that I had forced him to leave early, and that I used my mother's death to control him. He told them that I was not close to my mom at all, that I rarely spoke to her, and that whenever I mentioned her I just badmouthed her. I sat there listening, stunned. That night I had simply texted my boyfriend that I was not doing well and hoped he could come home sooner. When he got back he was cold and impatient. I had thought he was just tired. Now I heard the version he gave his friends, and it was completely upside down. The friend kept talking. He said this wasn't the first time. Almost every time we argued my boyfriend would bring it to the group but change the story. He gave examples. One time I was upset because my boyfriend forgot to pick me up after work. In the group chat he said I had blown up at him for no reason. Another time we had agreed to look at apartments and he cancelled at the last minute. In the group chat he said I was pressuring him every day to buy a house. He explained that he had always been unsure about these stories because he had never seen me directly. His whole picture of me came through my boyfriend. They thought I was cold, fake, someone who acted sweet in front of them and trashed them behind their backs. Until my post he had no reason to doubt it. He then told me something that made my chest tighten. He said my boyfriend had done the same thing in a past relationship. Back then he also twisted every argument and played the victim. That ex-girlfriend broke up, everyone blamed her, and only later did they realize what had been happening. This time, when my post appeared, the friend finally decided he didn't want to stay silent. He went on with more examples. He said in their group chat my boyfriend would screenshot pieces of our messages but crop out the beginning, leaving only a line that made me look unreasonable. Over time everyone saw me as the problem girlfriend. He said my boyfriend would call me psycho after every disagreement. He said there was even a time when my boyfriend joked about me acting sweet when he brought me to meet them. He told me about specific incidents. One night while gaming my boyfriend said, "She's using her mom's death for sympathy." Another time he sent a photo of me crying and captioned it with a joke about me being dramatic. The friend admitted he had laughed along back then because he didn't know the context. Now he felt sick about it. I kept silent on the line. My hands were shaking. He said he understood this was a lot to hear, but he wanted me to have the full picture. He said if he had a girlfriend and someone was doing this to her behind her back he would hope someone would warn her. He paused and asked if I was still there. I said yes. He told me he couldn't make decisions for me but he wanted me to know that what I was feeling was not crazy and not my fault. He also said that several of the guys in their circle had started pulling back from my boyfriend because they were tired of the pattern. When we hung up I just sat on the sofa staring at my phone. My mind replayed scenes from the past. Times when my boyfriend had told me, "Don't talk too much to my friends." I had thought he meant he was shy. Times when after a fight he would go out to cool off. I had thought he just needed space. Now I pictured him spinning new stories about me. A few minutes later the friend sent me several voice messages. He said if I needed proof he could give me screenshots. He sent some right then. I opened them and saw my boyfriend's messages in their group. He had written that I threw things around the apartment. The truth was I had once dropped an empty cup. He had written that I threatened to break up every day. The truth was I had once said we should take a break to calm down. He had written that I had no job and lived off him. The truth was I had always worked, only with a smaller income. Each screenshot felt like a blow. It was like watching someone else's life but knowing it was supposed to be mine. That night I remembered how he had acted at the start of our relationship. He told me, I rarely share my life with others, and my friends are a little weird. I had thought he was just private. Now I realized he had been building two separate versions of himself from the beginning, one with me and one with them. I kept replaying the friend's voice in my head. When he said, "You're not the first," his tone was exhausted. He said he didn't want to see my boyfriend hurt another person the way he had before. That single word, exhausted, felt like a hammer. I understood in that moment that my trust was gone, not because of one slip, but because of a long pattern of lies. I didn't sleep much that night. I sat on my bed and listened to each voice message again. I saved every screenshot. I wasn't sure if I would ever use them, but I wanted to have them. I texted my brother that I might come stay for a while. He asked what was going on. I wrote back, "Long story. I'll tell you when I get there." Inside, though, I already knew my decision. When I arrived at my brother's place, I felt tired but clear. I unpacked a small bag and left the rest of my things in the car. For a few days I helped my brother with small chores, went through my mom's belongings, and tried to keep myself busy. Every night my boyfriend sent long messages. He said he missed me. He called several times. I didn't answer at first. After 3 days he wrote that he was driving over to see me. I told him not to, but he said he was already on the way. I went outside to wait by the porch so we wouldn't disturb my brother. When he arrived he got out of the car quickly. He looked tired and nervous. He started by saying he loved me, that he didn't know what was wrong with him, that he would go to therapy. He said we could start over. I told him I had all the screenshots. I told him his friend had spoken to me. He tried to deny it for a minute and then stopped. He covered his face with his hands. I said I had believed he was different, but now I knew this had been going on for a long time. He stepped closer and reached for my arm. I stepped back. I told him I couldn't do this anymore. He started crying. He said I was everything to him. He said if I left he would fall apart. I thought about the night he posted my crying photo to his friends. I thought about the times he had made up stories. I thought about how I had moved states for him. I told him we were over. I told him I was moving back to my family and he should not contact me again. He began raising his voice, saying I was ruining his life. I told him to stop. My brother came out onto the porch. My boyfriend went silent. He asked me to at least come back and get the rest of my things with him. I said no. I told him he could leave them at the door or I would send someone. He stood there for a while and then walked back to his car. He sat in it for a few minutes. I stayed on the porch. Finally he started the engine and drove away. Later that evening he sent another long message. He said he was sorry. He said he didn't know why he lied. He said he would change. I didn't answer. I blocked his number. Over the next few days he tried to reach me through email and social media. I deleted the messages without reading them. I spent time with my brother and my cousins. I went to the cemetery with my family. I sorted through my mom's papers. Each day I felt a little less afraid. I opened a bank account in my own name. I started looking for jobs back in my hometown. I reached out to 2 old friends. Sometimes at night I still thought about him and felt angry. Other nights I just felt empty. But I reminded myself of the phone call, the screenshots, the way he had laughed at me with his friends. I told my brother one evening that I didn't regret leaving. He said he was proud of me. I started sleeping better. After a week at my brother's house I started to notice how my thoughts changed. In the first few days I kept replaying every fight in my head. I asked myself if I had been too harsh, if maybe I had misunderstood. By the 7th day I stopped blaming myself as much. One morning I sat at the kitchen table with my coffee and opened my phone. I scrolled through the screenshots again. I looked at each line slowly. I remembered the real context of each fight. I began writing small notes next to them. This was the night he forgot to pick me up. This was after my doctor appointment. Seeing it written down helped me see the pattern. Later that day I helped my brother clean out the garage. While we were moving boxes I told him how my boyfriend had described me to his friends. My brother just shook his head. He said he had always worried about me being isolated. Hearing him say that made me realize I had cut myself off from support without noticing. Another evening I sat on the porch and thought about the start of our relationship. I remembered how he used to tell me, "Don't bother my friends with details, or they won't understand you." At the time I thought he was shy. Now I understood those were ways to keep me separate so he could control the story. A few days later one of my old college friends called. She had seen my post too. We talked for an hour. She told me my boyfriend had once sent her a strange message on social media, complaining about me. She hadn't replied back then because she didn't want to interfere. Hearing that added another piece to the puzzle. Each conversation like that shifted my thinking a little more. I stopped seeing him as a good person who made one mistake. I started seeing him as someone who had repeated the same behavior for years. In the afternoons I sorted my mother's belongings. Sometimes I would find a photo or a letter and start crying. But I also felt stronger. I realized that even while I was grieving I had still managed to leave a harmful relationship. At night I wrote in a notebook. I wrote simple things like, "I am not crazy," and "This is real." I listed the times he had lied. I listed the people who had reached out to me. The pages filled quickly. By the end of the second week I could picture a future without him. I started making a plan to move back to my hometown. I sent messages to 2 potential employers. I told my brother I wanted to stay with family until I could stand on my own. Every small step felt like proof that my judgment was returning. Each small piece of evidence, each call from a friend, each memory put in order, all of it built a clearer picture of what had really happened. I asked him to meet me at a small cafe near the park. It was quiet in the afternoon. I had already stayed at my brother's for a few weeks. He had sent messages, called, even came once to the door, asking me to come back. I didn't. During those weeks I thought about everything. I decided I needed to face him one last time, tell him everything directly, and close the chapter. When he arrived he looked tired. He sat across from me. "I'm glad you called," he said. I nodded. "I didn't call to get back together. I called to talk." He sighed. "I know. I want to explain." I opened my bag and took out my phone. "Before you explain, I need you to listen." I started with the first point. "You told your friends I used my mother's death to control you. You told them I wasn't close to her, that I faked my feelings. That's not a misunderstanding. That's you lying about me." He rubbed his hands. I was angry. I was drinking. It was stupid talk. I answered, "It wasn't one night. It was over and over. Different chats, same words." I gave another example. "You said you were working late. Your friend's story showed you at a bar. You didn't tell me." He said, "I thought you'd be upset." I said, "I was upset because you lied. If you had told me, I would not have cared as much." I kept going. "When we traveled, you said you were tired from meetings. Later I found out you went singing with friends. You didn't tell me." He lowered his eyes. "I didn't think it mattered." I said, "It matters because it keeps happening." I added, "When I met your mother she criticized me. You didn't defend me. You stayed silent." He whispered, "I didn't want to fight with her." I said, "I wanted you to at least show me I mattered." He looked away. "I've been under pressure. I just vent with my friends." I said, "Venting is telling the truth, not inventing lies." He tried to speak but I went on. "You told them I pretended to be nice to them, that I insulted them behind their backs. You know that's not true." He said quietly, "I thought they'd like me more if I joked about you." I said, "You chose being liked over being honest." He raised his voice. "And you? You always check my phone. You don't trust me." I stayed calm. "I didn't start by checking your phone. I started after I saw patterns. After I heard things. Every time I looked, I found another lie." He shook his head. "You're too controlling." I said, "I became controlling because of your behavior. Before that, I wasn't." We sat in silence for a moment. I continued. "You told your friend I was dramatic when I got sick, that I was playing for sympathy. That day I had a fever and you went out." He said, "I was stressed." I said, "You have been stressed many times but that doesn't justify disrespect." I listed another one. "You said your phone broke and you couldn't reach me. But you were chatting in your group. That wasn't an accident." He answered, "I borrowed a phone." I said, "Then why didn't you tell me? It's always the same pattern." He covered his face with his hands. "I don't know why I do this." I said, "I know why. You care more about looking good to your friends than about being honest with me." He looked at me. "So what do you want now?" I said, "I want to make clear that I'm done. I wanted to say this to your face. I'm not coming back." He reached for my hand. "I can change. I'll go to therapy. I'll stop talking about you. Please just give me one more chance." I pulled my hand back. You already promised many times. After the first chat I confronted you, you cried, you said you loved me. After the second time you said you'd change. It didn't happen. I can't live waiting for the next lie. He said, but I love you. I said, love without respect isn't enough. I gave still another small example. 2 weeks before my mother's funeral you told your friends I was overreacting, that I used her death to skip events. You didn't even ask me how I was. He whispered, I was stupid. I said, I needed support, not gossip. He tried again. If you come back, I'll show you I'm different. I shook my head. I've heard that before. I'm not angry anymore. I'm just done. He sat back, eyes wet. So that's it? I said, yes. I've made arrangements. I'm moving my things. You don't have to pick me up or call me. He looked at me as if searching for a way to hold me there. Can we at least stay friends? I said, not now. Maybe someday. Right now I need space to heal. He was silent. I stood up, then sat down again. I don't hate you. But I won't live in a life built on half-truths. Every small lie, every story you told your friends, chipped away at me. I lost myself trying to prove I wasn't who you said I was. He nodded slowly. I get it. I said, I hope you really do. Because the next person you date deserves honesty from you. He wiped his eyes. I'm sorry. I said, I know. I stood up and pushed the chair back. Goodbye. He didn't follow me out. I walked to the park behind the cafe. The air was cool. For the first time in months I felt my chest open. My phone was silent. I thought of my mother, my brother, my friends traveling. I thought of how much energy I had spent defending myself against lies. I realized I didn't have to do that anymore. As I walked, I replayed our argument. Each point I had raised, each small story, each answer he gave. It was like closing drawers one by one. Nothing was left unsaid. I had asked for honesty, he had chosen excuses. That was clear now. I reached a bench and sat down. I texted my brother that it was over and I was on my way back. The sky looked open. I felt tired but also light. For weeks I had woken up with a knot in my stomach. That knot was gone. In its place there was a quiet sense of beginning. I didn't know exactly what my future would look like. But I knew it would not include checking someone's phone for proof of respect. It would not include trying to guess what stories were being told about me. It would not include explaining my grief to someone who didn't care to understand. I stood up again and started walking toward the bus stop. I felt like I was stepping out of a closed room into open air. My life was mine again. That was the first moment in a long time that I felt new.